All right. Hello. Are we on? I think we're on. Yes. Awesome. Thank you, Shannon, for that wonderful introduction, telling everybody about my car journey. So my name's Alastair, and I'm here to talk to you about winning at project management with the Team Playbook. And I'm here to talk to you with my co-presenter, Sarah Goff-Dupont, one of our principal writers. Sarah, who's right here. Or not. Where's Sarah?
Alastair! Alastair! Holy crap, dude. Is our talk right now?
It's right now.
Oh, no. No, we're not ready for this.
What do you mean? I've been working on this for weeks, months.
Yeah, me too. But remember how you wanted to structure the talk one way and I wanted to structure the talk another way?
Yeah, but you know, I've got my talk track all rehearsed. I'm ready to go.
I have my talk track rehearsed too, except our two talk tracks don't line up at all.
Oh. Well, you know, maybe it won't be that bad. You've got the slides together, right? The slides are done?
I have my slides put together.
What about mine?
You wanted me to do yours too?
Kinda. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We can't really reschedule this. There's a few hundred people here. Can you see them? Do you reckon they can see us?
Do you think they can hear us?
I think so. We've got mics on.
Oh, God.
Okay, so this is kind of ironic. So our job was to do a talk about the playbook. And it's kind of ironic that our job was to deliver this talk, and yet we've kind of made a little bit of a mess of it.
Just a little bit.
Did we, come to think of it, did we use any of the plays from the playbook when we were putting this together? Did we?
No. And I think I see your point.
Okay.
Hey. What if we... And then...
Maybe.
Yeah?
All right. So, I can feel a lot of trust in the room. Is there a lot of trust in the room? Do you trust us? Yeah? Okay, the last session of the day. Everyone's high on caffeine, hopefully, and we're all ready to go. There's a lot of trust. So what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly what the Team Playbook would tell us to do. We're going to run a retro right here in front of you guys. Because it's quite trusting in here, what do you reckon?
All right, let's do this.
All right.
So it's pretty clear that Alastair and I didn't align on some very important things about our project. We didn't agree on what our goals were.
No.
We stalled out on making at least one very important decision.
More than that.
Yeah, probably. We didn't clarify who was responsible for what. And I think it's generally safe to say we did not communicate effectively at all, which I'm sure has never happened to any of you before, because you're all very smart people. So let's unpack all that, shall we? Starting with goals.
So first off, bit of a backstory. I was brought into this project a little bit late. Does that happen on projects when people come in late? Yeah, a few nods, of course. So I was brought in a little bit late. Sarah came up with the concept, and it's an excellent concept about talking about the playbook. And then the summit organizers, Shannon, lovely in the front row, she said that it would be great to have somebody from one of the product teams to give a different perspective on the talk, to start, you know, bringing in things about how we use this in day-to-day product development. And so I probably stupidly said yes, because the other part of the backstory is that at the moment, my wife and I have just had our second child, so we've got a 4-month-old buddy. Thank you.
Aww.
I'd just taken on a new job as the head of design for platform, kind of a big thing if you watched the keynote this morning. I'm also relocating to Mountain View in 6 weeks, so I'm moving from Sydney, Australia to America. And I'm also giving another summit talk tomorrow. So I had kind of a lot going on, just a little bit.
Just a couple things going on for you besides this. So my original goal for this talk was twofold, actually. One, score a free trip back to San Francisco, because I just moved out of state and wanted to come back and see my team and my friends. Two, show summit attendees how to run a project start to finish using plays from the Team Playbook. Goals not necessarily listed in priority order.
Goal number one was important, right?
So it is important. So when Alastair joined, he then suggested a goal of helping people understand how to use the Team Playbook to resolve and hopefully prevent common problems that crop up in the middle of projects. And both are really good goals, but we knew that with only about 30 minutes on stage, there's no way we could do both. And the thing is, we never chose one goal over the other.
And so on a simple project like this, we could have probably just sat around, talked about it, and come to an agreement.
Yeah, probably.
Yep. But that wouldn't be so interesting. So it reminds me of a much bigger project that I was involved with a couple of years ago, something that you, if you use Confluence, may know as Confluence Collaborative Editing. So I've got the original video that Mike and Scott used when they announced this behind me. And we were trying to solve the problem of multiple people editing the same page in Confluence. And so when that happened, you'd get that scary dialogue that said, say, Sarah was editing this page.
Which is a scary thing indeed.
It's scary because you may lose some work and you may overwrite the changes.
Especially if I'm writing the page.
Exactly. And so we were trying to solve that problem and help people collaborate in real time together on a project. And so when we kicked that off, we actually ran a series, used a play called Goals, Signals, and Measures. And so Goals, Signals, and Measures helps you understand what you're trying to achieve in a project. And so we knew that collaborative editing was actually going to be this super hard, long-term project. And so we needed to run a number of these workshops over the course of a few weeks. And I think it actually ended up taking about a month to get to the end of these Goals, Signals, Measures workshops.
That is hardcore goal setting. Now, full disclosure, Goals, Signals, and Measures, it's a great play, but it can be a little tricky. I mean, not that the step-by-step mechanics are so difficult. I mean, it's essentially a brainstorming and culling exercise. But getting everyone in the room to really wrap their heads around the difference between a goal, a signal, and a measure can be a little bit difficult. So goals in this context are the outcome that you're shooting for. It's definitely not an output of effort. So for Alastair and the collaborative editing team, their goal wasn't ship collaborative editing to customers, because that's just an output of effort. It doesn't really speak to the value of that work. The goal that they eventually landed on was that customers should find value in the collaborative editing feature. Now, that is a super smoke and mirrors, hand-wavy, nebulous, fuzzy goal. I mean, how would you ever know if you'd achieved it?
Yeah. And I think that's where you start understanding that you need to listen for signals. And so signals are tangible indications that you're on the right track, that you're getting towards that goal. And so for us, in this example in collaborative editing, we knew that if customers were turning on collaborative editing, because they could choose to do that in Confluence Cloud, that was a signal that they were turning it on and then keeping it on. That was a signal that, to us, that they were actually enjoying that experience. And then in Server, if people were actually upgrading their license to the next version of Confluence to get collaborative editing, and then sticking with that, then we could see that they were actually enjoying the experience.
I noticed that those are very measurable signals.
Exactly. And so listening, once we understood what we were looking to try to achieve, we could start to listen to metrics. And so for us in Cloud, we have in-product analytics. And for Server, we can see our licensing system, whether people are actually upgrading to the next version. And so for us, we set ourselves a goal that 90% of people were upgrading and then sticking with that experience, with the collaborative editing experience. Now, just to kind of reinforce what Sarah just said, focusing on outcomes and output rather than outputs, that's actually the really tricky part. The actual mechanics of the play is actually quite easy, but actually trying to focus on outcomes rather than just, we need to ship this thing, like that is actually the key thing, and really quite hard when you're delivering complex software.
It is, yeah, and like most things that are worthwhile, this can be a tough play. I mean, it's challenging to think through the outcome that you're trying to get at, the value that you want your work to have. Thinking through a list of tasks is super easy, but that's not what this play does. That's not where you get the value from this play. But if you invest the time to do this up front early on in your project, having aligned on a goal, an outcome that you're shooting for, makes so many things down the road throughout your project so much easier. All the day-to-day decisions that you have to make with your team become easier to make because you've got that goal, that North Star that you can look to. Now, I want to circle back to something you said a minute ago. You said that collaborative editing was solving a problem for customers.
Yes.
And that kind of triggered a thought in me. It occurs to me that, it's really hard to agree on a goal if you can't agree on what problem you're solving. Like, you thought we were going to solve the problem of repairing projects in trouble. I thought we were going to solve the problem of kicking off a project and seeing it through to delivery. We should have run the problem framing play.
Yes, I agree.
Yep, this is a really good thought exercise. It's one of my favorites. I ran this play with the content team when we were getting ready to launch the Smells Like Team Spirit publication on medium.com. It's one of Atlassian's Medium publications. Shameless plug. You should totally check out Smells Like Team Spirit on medium.com. So the first part of the play is you come in you all come in the room with slightly different notions of what the problem is that you're solving. So the first thing that you do is spend some time agreeing on what that problem is and articulating it in a succinct way. From there, the play has you step through who has this problem, when or where they encounter it, and why the problem is worth solving. Both why it's worth solving for the customer and why it's worthwhile for you as a business or organization. So the kicker, though, is that you might get through this hour-long exercise and find that the problem you had in mind is not worth solving. Either there's very little value in it, as it turns out, or perhaps the people who have this problem are not the target, audience that you're trying to reach. So you might send yourselves right back to the drawing board, but I think that investing an hour in exploring this upfront in your project is way better than powering through and delivering something that nobody wants and never asked for.
Exactly. And I've lost count of the number of projects at Atlassian where we've run this play and then decided that we shouldn't move forward with months of engineering because we're not solving a real problem.
Totally.
And so, coming back to our project that we failed on.
Yep.
So we didn't have a goal, we didn't clarify, and we also didn't clarify whose decision it was.
No, we did not.
No. And so I thought it was you. You thought it was me, right?
Yeah, because it was my idea for the talk. But then, so I can totally see why you would have thought it was my decision, but I was just so glad to have a co-presenter that I didn't want to be all bossy and make you regret joining the project. And so I just sort of went along with my original idea instead of making waves about it and, risking a confrontation.
You're not bossy, Sarah. You're not. You're not bossy.
Oh, you have no idea.
Well. So we totally could have solved this, right, with a Desi.
With a Desi.
Okay.
Desi stands for Driver, Approver, Contributors, and Informed. This is a framework for group decision making. We didn't invent it here at Atlassian. A lot of teams use it, but it's become really popular. So the driver is the person who's responsible for making sure the decision actually gets made and gets made in a timely fashion. The approver is the one person who makes the call. One person. Just because it is a group decision doesn't mean that you should make this decision by consensus or by vote. That doesn't lead to effective, good decisions. But how does the approver make a good decision? They get recommendations from the contributors, the Cs. Now, these are going to be subject area experts who provide recommendations to the approver. So I like to say that they have a voice but not a vote. And then the Is, the informed, these are the people whose work might be affected by the outcome of the decision. So these might be teams that kind of work on the periphery of what you're doing. It could be project stakeholders. It might even be your executive sponsor. But this is the group of people that has no voice and no vote. And I know that sounds decidedly ungroovy and very command and controlling. But I'm just, I'm in the sake, in the name of transparency, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that I think it's okay that if somebody's work isn't directly affected, they don't have specific knowledge about the decision, it's okay to say, hey, love you, but we don't need you to be a cook in the kitchen right now. We're just going to let you know when dinner's ready.
And so running Desis, if you're not already, it's actually really straightforward. It's another quite straightforward play to run. And there's also a handy Confluence blueprint, another shameless plug. But there's a handy Confluence blueprint for this. But Where Desi's can actually get a little bit awkward is if you're moving to a triad structure in your software development process. So we've been talking about triads at Atlassian for about since 2013. And if that triad is product management, engineering, and design, making a decision as a group. Now, traditionally, the approver of a decision may well have always been the most senior person on the team. Or it may be the product manager. They may always be making the decision. But at Atlassian, the approver is not always that person. It depends on the type of project that you're running. So as an example, if you're running a really heavy engineering project where there's a lot of back-end changes, the approver may actually be the engineering manager because they're in the best position to make that decision. If we're running, say, an envisioning project where we're reimagining what Confluence or one of our products could be, or we're reimagining a feature entirely, then the approver may actually be the head of design. And so that can actually feel a little bit awkward for some teams if you're moving to that triad structure, that the full-time owner or the approver may actually change on your Desis. But we actually embrace that and see that as a good thing. And so, yeah, that's another shameless plug. If you do want to, there's been a few talks about triads, but this is the original talk that I was signed up to Summit to come and give, which is a talk called A Designer and a Product Manager Walk into a Bar. And I'm talking with Sharif Mansour, who you probably all know, one of our principal product managers, just about how you work effectively between product management and design in a growing software organization.
Check it out. It's going to be good. I want to add, too, that Desi, we often think of a Desi as being used in the context of bookended projects that have a definitive start and a definitive end. But I also think that they can be really effective in ongoing projects where you would set up like a default Desi that you just sort of refer to and tweak as needed. So for example, I'm on the team that builds the Team Playbook, and I'm also on the team that runs the Atlassian blog. Two projects that are ongoing and I hope will go on for a very, very long time, else I'm out of a job. So on the blog, for example, we've got a default Desi. By default, our driver is a guy named Jamie. He's a teammate of mine. And he handles like day-to-day operations for the blog. Our default approver is Paul. That's our team lead. Kind of makes sense. He's the boss. Then we've got me and my fellow writer, Natalie. We typically chime in as contributors on decisions. And then the informed group is usually, well, by default, would be like people who post blogs frequently, perhaps a team like the web team that supports the blog from a technical standpoint. They support our WordPress instance. So we would use that type of Desi just by default if we have a small decision like, should we add this new tag, or should we change the name of this category, or what's our editorial calendar looking like for the next couple of months. But if we did a bigger project that had sort of higher stakes decisions like changing the page layout on the blog, we would probably shuffle this Desi around a fair bit. We'd certainly give a designer a pretty strong voice in that process. In fact, we might have a designer be the approver, and perhaps I would step from my usual role as contributor into an informed position.
So not only did we fail to decide our project's goal,
Yep.
what our roles were, who was accountable, we didn't actually define what we were supposed to do, did we?
No, we did not.
Yeah, so again, I thought you were doing all the slides, the talk track. I was kind of hoping that because I was kind of busy with my kid and all that stuff. You were hoping I would contribute, right?
Yeah, you're a designer. I thought you'd put together some pretty slides. I thought maybe you should be doing it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So that's a pretty that's a pretty foul misunderstanding.
yeah, a little bit of a misunderstanding. But if you want to prevent those kind of misunderstandings that we've just kind of been through, a really lovely way to do that is through the Team Health Monitor. And so we've been talking about Team Health Monitors now at Atlassian at Summit for the last couple of years, but we've been using them internally for about 5. And how they came about was we looked at all of our internal teams. So the most successful teams that we had, some of also the least successful, some dysfunctional teams. And we then looked at what made those teams successful. And we came up with 8 attributes that were critical to a team's success. And so if a team was nailing those attributes, they were probably doing a great job, but many teams weren't. And so the health monitor is a framework for your team to talk about how they're doing it in these 8 areas. And the key thing here is that you get to a shared understanding of a team of where you're doing an awesome job and where you could probably improve. And so those 8 attributes, you can actually just vote really simply, thumbs up for green, we're doing a great job, thumbs sideways for yellow, and thumbs down for red. And then you can start tracking over time how you're doing. And so for us, on our project gone wrong, we were probably red on full-time owner. I thought you was that.
Yep.
You thought I was
Yep,
that?
I'd say that's true.
Not great. We were probably red on balanced team.
Maybe.
Probably red on shared understanding.
Oh, bright red.
Bright red.
Yeah.
Probably yellow on managed dependencies.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair. And so what we could have done if we'd run a health monitor is we could have actually understood some of the plays to get us into a better place. And most importantly, we'd have been at a shared understanding as a team on how we needed to improve. And then, over time, we could have actually run subsequent health monitors, and we do this in project teams. They usually run every couple of weeks to see how you're tracking. Are you getting better in the areas that you're red? Are you moving to green? And sometimes what quite often happens is you may be green in specific areas, so you're doing a great job, but over time, as a project changes, you actually may move to red.
Yep.
And that's okay as well. It's just key that your team has that shared understanding and you can see how you're tracking.
Totally. We can't emphasize enough that if you go from green to yellow or red, it does not mean you are bad people, and it does not mean that you're bad at your job. Just stuff happens. Things change. And the health monitor provides kind of a nice early warning system to alert you to the fact that things aren't going as well as maybe they were before, and it gives you a chance to do something about them. I don't know if I should say this. Okay, all right, I'm just going to say it.
There's a lot of trust in here.
Okay.
I can feel the
I'm
trust.
feeling the trust. I feel a lot of psychological safety. Okay, you want to know a dirty little secret?
Yes.
Okay. I mentioned that I'm on the team that makes the Team Playbook. And when we were first taking the Team Playbook from an internal resource to a public-facing website, oh, God, we did not run one single health monitor.
Shame.
I know. Isn't that terrible? If any team is supposed to run a health monitor, it's the team that makes the Team Playbook.
I know.
It's terrible. I blame Dom. I don't know.
Is Dom in here?
I don't know. No, he's not. So that means we definitely blame Dom. Okay. So yeah, I won't bore you with the reasons why, but I will tell you that, to the surprise of no one really, we struggled in that first effort. We tripped over dependencies. We stumbled over decision making. It was kind of painful at times. Thankfully, we were a pretty strong team, just sort of inherently, and had a lot of trust and respect for each other. So we were able to just like kind of link arms and power through and get that first version out the door. And I will tell you that the next week, as soon as it was shipped, we started doing health monitors on a monthly cadence. And things are way better now. Like, we've got this really nice groove. Not that we were bad before, but it's nice. It's nice where we are now.
And it's not just team health monitors for projects that we run. So I also work as part of the design leadership group. And in that leadership group, we also run a leadership health monitor. Now, we don't run it as regularly as every couple of weeks as we do on a project. We usually run it every quarter. And we're actually looking over longer time horizons. We're looking at broader goals. And one of the key things that we're looking at is how do we empower our teams to do the best work of their lives? But it's a super important tool for us to understand as a group how we're tracking over time.
I love how the Team Health Monitor prompts you to talk about how you're working together, because you just don't really have that conversation kind of in your day-to-day. And then a nice side benefit is that while you're talking about how you're working together, you almost inevitably talk about what you're working on and what each person's role is that they're playing in that. So it's kind of a nice way to get that high-level refresher every once in a while. But I gotta say, for nitty-gritty, day-to-day coordination, it is really hard to beat stand-up.
It is.
Show of hands, who all is doing stand-ups or has done them in the past? Yay! The rest of you, I expect you to be able to raise your hand next year when asked that question at Summit. You have homework. So for the uninitiated, in stand-up, you gather your team for a few minutes, you go around, and everyone shares their progress since last time, their plan for today, and whether they've got any blockers that they're facing. So it's a really lightweight format. It makes it super easy to see if people are duplicating efforts or if people are working on things that might even conflict. It also makes it fairly easy to see when work is not getting done. Like, for example, if you go to stand-up and somebody keeps not saying that they're working on their slides that day.
Like me, you mean?
For example. Yeah, so you can kind of pick up a little bit of an early warning system there, too. And in case you're wondering, yes, you actually stand up. This is a very important part of stand-up. The idea is that you don't want to get too comfortable. So if you're seated, you might tend to prattle on a little bit. But if you're standing and you're ever so slightly physically uncomfortable, it's going to help you remember to keep your updates short. It has the same effect for everyone else. Because this meeting should take, 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the most?
10 tops.
Yeah, I'd say. So daily stand-ups are probably the most common. That's certainly sort of the original way to do them. But if you're on one of those projects where everyone is maybe 20-25% dedicated to the project, you might not have meaningful updates to share every day. So you might choose to do a twice weekly or 3 times a week stand-up, and that's perfectly fine too. On the Team Playbook team, we do a stand-up once a week. And then we do a lot of chatting in our stride room. We do a lot of impromptu video calls, and those things help us kind of bridge the gap.
And so the last major problem of our summit talk, because we had a few, just a few, that we had a huge communication breakdown.
Not just an awesome Led Zeppelin song.
I didn't know it was a Led Zeppelin song.
How do you not know that that's a Led Zeppelin song?
Sorry, not a fan. So Sarah just mentioned that being a big fan of stand-ups as a way to maintain communication amongst a project team. Now, it basically guarantees that you talk to each other at least once a day. But there's also another thing that we use generally in the design team, something called design sparring. And that comes out of really the art world around art crits or art critiques. And it's a structured peer review feedback session. And as an example, the awesome new logos that you saw revealed this morning for Atlassian and for all of our brands, I know for a fact that that team worked on those over the course of many, many months. And they would present their work to their peers and then get feedback and evolve that work and make it into a much richer outcome.
So I think it's important to remember, too, that sparring is not the same as fighting. When I think of sparring, I think of knights, like in the yard at Winterfell with snow falling, But they're using wooden swords, or they're using swords with dull blades, because they're doing sword play with people on the same side as they are. They're practicing. So the goal of sparring is not to win, it's to learn.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing. Certainly designers in all of the teams that I work with, they will present work multiple times. And that doesn't mean that they're getting feedback and they're presenting that work multiple times, and I don't think they're very good at their job. I'm just really pleased that they're showing and sharing early work in a safe environment, and they're trying to learn and evolve that piece of work so that it's an awesome experience for all of our customers. And so, you and I, we didn't really spar on this talk track, eh?
Nope, not a thing.
So we really missed an opportunity to make it somewhat better.
Yep, we did. Couldn't have made it much worse. Now, I am not super experienced with sparring, but the mechanism that I like for communication on a project is called the project poster. Now, our project to create this summit talk was probably too straightforward, too small to really warrant a project poster. Where it really shines is in large, long, complicated projects where things are kind of fuzzy at the start, like maybe you know what your goal of the project is, but you really don't know how you're going to get there. And the poster, by the way, it's just a document. We do ours in Confluence. There's even a Confluence blueprint for it. Shameless plug for Confluence, get the blueprint. And it has all these different sections that forces you to think through, well, not forced you, we'll say prompts you to think through, what assumptions are you making, what problem are you solving, what risks are you taking on, and ultimately, what solutions are you going to pursue. So on the Team Playbook team, we do a project poster for each round of updates to the playbook. And each round of updates is, like, we structure it such that each individual update aligns to a common theme. And so we use the problem space section of the poster up at the top to articulate what that problem is and a few other things about it. And then we move down the page to the validate assumptions section. This is where we compile research that we've been doing. So for us, that usually comes in the form of getting feedback and anecdotes from customers like you at Summit. Come see me at the booth, the Team Playbook booth, if you want to give us some feedback, because we'd really love to have it. And then we're a website, right? So our web analytics, all that data, that's really important research that we can put into our project poster to help us figure out how we're going to make the next round of updates. And then finally, down at the bottom is the envision section. And that's where we spell out possible solutions that we might want to pursue and ultimately choose one or two that we want to go for.
And so for me, I'm really pleased that we're ending on the project poster, because this is actually my go-to, my favorite play in the whole of the playbook.
Is it really?
The one, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the one that I love the most. And the reason, there's a couple of reasons I love this play the most in the poster format. One is that all of the plays that we've just talked about, goals, signals, measures, sparring, etc., they all roll up into this one page, essentially, this quite lightweight page. And so as a manager of teams, I can go to a project poster and understand the problem that that team is trying to solve, how they will know if they're successful, what solutions that they may already have or maybe don't have, data that they already have about a solution or maybe don't have. And then, if my manager or anybody else outside of my organization wants to know about the project that's going on, I can share that single page with that person as well, so they can get an idea of what's going on in that project. And so it's a super simple, lightweight tool, because it's not a very big document, to get a really good overview of what's going on in a project.
Mm-hmm. You know, I got to say, I was a big skeptic of the project poster for a long time.
Boo.
I was. No, because I'd been, like, at past jobs, I'd encountered project briefs, which I thought were complete BS, because they're obsolete the moment you finish writing them. Because, like, the project changes, and then nobody ever goes back to update the damn brief. So it's like, why was that not wasted effort? So it took me a while. It actually took me using the project poster for me to understand how it was different. And I do love the fact that it's a page in Confluence, or at least that's how we do it. And I can just send people there instead of spending an hour writing them like a bespoke status update email. And then they can just put a watch on the page, and then they get updates whenever we add new info to the page. It's pretty cool. And I noticed, too, that the project poster is getting really popular amongst some of the project-based and especially non-technical teams at Atlassian. I see them all over in marketing now. HR does a lot of them, and info security, I hear, are big project poster fans.
Right, so we learned a lot about messing up a project, right?
We sure did.
Yeah.
We'll definitely do it better next year.
You think they're going to bring us back next year? You reckon?
Fair point. But hey, did you guys learn something today? Clap.
People learn?
Did you learn something?
Did you learn something?
Oh,
that's good.
Thank goodness. Okay.
So maybe they will bring us back next year.
Well,
Shannon,
maybe
are you
we've got
gonna
a
bring us back
shot. Oh, Shannon's giving us the thumbs up. Yay. Thank you, Shannon. Sweet. All right, well, let's open it up for Q&A. I think we have a few minutes left. So if you've got questions about a project that you're working on and wondering how the Team Playbook might help, or if you just have questions about specific plays, let's hear it.
Thank you.
Oops. Yep, I think so. And wait,
Yeah.
do we get a PDF, like a PDF export kind of thing?
There will be, the slides will be up online as well as the recording. And this was being live streamed as well. So very exciting.
Oh my God, we were on TV, dude.
You're famous.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. They're going to be putting on the community and on the Summit website.
Oh my God. Wow. Speaking of failing on our slides, we didn't put the Playbook website address up there. It's Atlassian.com/team-playbook. You can also, if you if you ever get on the Googles, you can just Google Atlassian Playbook. That'll lead you to it.
There's a Playbook booth in the expo hall, and there's a couple of guys sitting at the
Come
back.
to the
I can see
booth.
Matt and Slady at the back. They've got these special like T-shirts on.
Yep. So we need a group of people to write the copy for it. That's my job in it. I'm the writer on the project. Yay.
So she asked what the purpose of the
Team Playbook team is.
team is.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's all sorts of different skills that are needed to produce this thing as a public resource. We need someone to write it and someone to design the pages. Did I not understand your question? Oh, why? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said, why do we have a team to make it? No, it exists because several years ago, we noticed that there were all these different teams and pockets around Atlassian that had all these cool little techniques and ways of working that they were doing and having success with, but it was very difficult to share them with other teams because I think we had like 6 offices at the time, now we have 9. Even at that time, we were spread across like at least 3 continents. So we basically set up, this was a super scrappy version of the playbook. We just set up a bunch of Confluence pages, and each page detailed what that technique was, why you would use it, how to use it, and that sort of thing. And it caught on, and people started adding to it. And then about a year ago, we decided to make it public. Yeah.
So she asked, how do we promote it within Atlassian?
A few different ways. There's a lot of like just grassroots stuff that we do. I mean, it's been around long enough that there are people pretty much everywhere in the company who know about it. We sometimes do internal blog posts on our Confluence instance when we add a new play, and that kind of like reminds people like, oh yeah, right, there's the playbook. I should go be using that thing. And we're looking at getting it woven into part of our onboarding for new employees as well. It's not mandated, but we do want it. We do try to encourage as much use as possible.
There's also a couple of other ways. So we have champions within the different product development teams.
Yeah.
So I'd be a champion within design of like encouraging my designers to use specific tools from the playbook. And there's also boot camps. So we run educational boot camps that people will train the trainer essentially. So they'll run a boot camp on how to run a project poster session or how to run a roles and responsibilities session. And so those get run. The program management team also generally owns some of that. I can see Matt nodding at the back. So the program management team internally with Atlassian, they'll also encourage that within different organizational units across Atlassian.
Awesome. Time for one more quick question.
Going there. You can come and chat to us afterwards. We'll be
Yeah,
around.
find us at the Team Playbook kiosk later too.
So it takes somebody kind of open to make the most of this. How do you encourage when you get like pushback from more closed conservative type folks?
I can take
That's
that.
like, yeah. Do you have? I mean,
No, that's fine.
I have ideas, but you might have actual experience.
Yeah, you want to bring. The great thing is bringing them along on the journey and making them feel part of that group, because most of these sessions are run as a group. So you'll run them as a triad or as an expanded team of say 10 or 15 engineers along with the triad. And so you want to bring them along on that journey and show them the value of why you're doing these things. And bringing them along, that's the thing that I'm going to talk about tomorrow, is helping a team understand why you're doing it and then showing them the value as you progress through a project. So that's how we generally do it. And as I said, having champions who are constantly pushing different techniques, that's one of the ways that we do it.
I think maybe starting with a play that they might be familiar with or feels familiar. So if they've heard of retrospectives before, maybe say, hey, there's this cool thing called the playbook. Retrospectives are part of it. Let's try that. And because, like if something is already at least a little bit familiar, you're just more apt to be agreeable to giving it a go. So you might just like look through the list of plays and see what's going to feel the most familiar and start with that.
Great. Thank you so much. I know we all learned a ton. Give another big round of applause.